Today I just thought I'd share a message regarding having a heart after God. I think if there's something we should be known as people that are not necessarily perfect, but certainly we're people that have a heart after God. And as I look at the Bible, I see that David is actually declared, King David in the Old Testament is actually declared biblically as the man or a man with a heart after God. So I thought we should look at some qualities of David's heart and how he lived his life to give us a picture of what a heart after God looks like. First, it must be stated, David wasn't perfect by any means. He made his fair share of mistakes, of his mess up with Bathsheba, and then coming out of that was getting rid of her husband, Uriah. And so again, as you look at the life and the heart of David, he wasn't a perfect person, but the thing that makes David a man after God's own heart is that when he failed or when it went wrong, he never moved further away from God, he always drew closer to God. And if there's some sort of takeaway from the day, it will be this, that when things go wrong in your life, if you don't do exactly what you thought you should do, then don't desert from God. He is not your enemy. Draw closer. He's your answer. And that gives us a heart. That's what a heart after God really looks like, is that ability, even when it goes wrong, even when you mess up, that you don't. See, Adam and Eve, what they did wrong in the garden was when they sinned, they hid themselves and they moved away from God rather than moving closer to God. And so therefore, it's a great indication to us that if things go wrong, even in challenges or problems, it saddens me sometimes when you watch people in church and they come in, they're all excited about God and they're in the front row and they're celebrating and then something goes wrong in their heart and then they start to go to the middle and they don't come quite as often and then you see them in the far back rows, no offense to anybody in the back row, unless, and you find out that it's not something the church has done, it's something that's happened in their heart. Something's gone wrong, they've got themselves into some sort of mess, and rather than coming closer to God, they move further away from God. And a heart after God is not that we're perfect people, it's that we realize that no matter what's going on or where we're at, He is our answer, so we move closer to Him. So some of the qualities of David's heart that we'll look at this morning that gives us a picture of a heart after God is this. Number one, David had a passionate heart. There's nothing that I can see more clearly out of looking at David's life than his heart after God and heart after the things of God. Look at Psalm 100 as he declares something of his heart towards us. It shows us as this: make a joyful shout to the Lord, all your lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before His presence with singing. Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who has made us and not we ourselves. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. And no matter where you find David speaking, he is passionate about God and the things of God. And I think that's a great message or statement of what a heart after God looks like. Listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me. And passion is not obligation. All right, I want you to hear that. Passion is not obligation. There's a difference between obliged to do something. You can live in the level of obligatory. No, is that the right word? Obligation, that sounds better. And if you can live in the world of obligation, but the truth is that obligation eventually makes withdrawals on your soul. If you're obliged in your marriage, or like, she's my wife, or he's my husband. If you're obliged with the things of God, well, I'd better go to church, or I should do this. Slowly but surely, you're making withdrawals on the strength of your soul. Obligation withdraws from us, but passion refuels and refires us. And if you live out of obligation, eventually you're going to run out of steam. You're going to miss out on the things of God. You're not going to have a great marriage. You're not going to have a great family because obligation withdraws from your soul. But passion re-energizes and refuels things. It re-energizes you. It's what keeps you going. And paying the price to overcome when there's obstacles or problems or challenges. And you can see the difference between somebody is obliged. They're just, I've got to do that. I've got to do that. Your job, I'm obliged to do that. But you can see the difference between them and somebody who's passionate. As we get around semi-final time in football, all the men start to show their passion. You can see it rise up in them. You can see it'll state of origin time. There's passion arises. My wife Lee, she hates football. No idea what it's about. The only game she will watch is State of Origin, and it's not to watch the game; it's to watch us. She just sees this, but look at women, they know passion because when they go to a mall and there's a sale on, that's passion. It's like Lisa says, come shopping with me, let's go together like it's a team sport. It's not a team sport when you get there. You are deserted, left behind. As soon as the sale comes up, their eyes roll back and a spirit of shopping overtakes them. Passion. When I lived in America, when I had a church there, when hunting season started, the men just got so passionate. Everywhere. They let you cut out in the morning, which isn't a bad thing. I used to push the cat out the door. And like this guy, he's a neighbor. I just got there and he's coming home one day. He's got a whole bunch of guns under his arm. And I'm trying to make conversation. So what have you been doing? He said, I've been out hunting. What have you been shooting? It says prairie dogs. And I'm, prairie dogs? Why? He said, they're a pest. They dig holes in my brother's farm and the cattle break their legs. So we go down and shoot them. And I'm trying to make conversation. So I said, well, what sort of gun do you use to shoot prairie dogs? He says, me? Big smile. Me? He says, I use an AK-47. I said, that's a Russian submachine gun. He said, yeah, it's awesome. I said, the bullets are bigger than the prairie dogs. He says, yeah, no, you can miss and the dirt cuts them in half. Passion. And not only does passion, you can tell somebody when there's passion on the inside. That's why the Bible speaks very clearly about refanning the flames of your love with Jesus. Not to live out of obligation, but to keep that fire burning, keep that passion going. And not only does passion reignite and restore you, it also is the great persuader. If we want people to find Jesus, it's not about information, it's about our passion towards the God who we serve. It's our passion towards the house of God that we attend. Nothing moves a human heart. It's not information that moves a human heart, it's passion that moves a human heart. And if we understand, if we want to reach people and let them know the good news, and who knows the Bible is the good news, then we've got to be somewhat excited about it. If you're excited about Jesus, let your face know every now and then and live out of a passion towards that. It's the great persuader. Remember the crocodile hunter? And one of the great Australians. And what he did for Australia overseas was unbelievable. I met him on a plane coming back from LA. He is the same off the plane as he is off the show, as he is on the show. He is ADD to the top. He is crazy, but so passionate. And I remember watching his shows, and I remember looking at a bug that I would have stood on a few minutes ago and enjoyed the pop. And now all of a sudden I've got a tear in my eye and I'm loving the bug. I've got a sticker on my car, save the bug. You know what I mean? It wasn't his great scientific knowledge, it wasn't his great oratory skills, it certainly wasn't his knowledge of workplace health and safety, but it was just his passion. A shark or a crocodile could have bitten his leg off and he'd go, crikey, it's taken my leg, but look how clean the cut is. Just passionate, the great persuader. So I really do believe that a heart after God is illustrated by us being passionate about the God who we serve. Passionate about the church that we attend. Not only will we keep refueled, we will keep people on task to persuade them to be interested in the God who loves them. Second thing about a heart after God is this, and David had a pure heart. A pure heart. 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 7 says this, but the Lord said to Samuel, who's the prophet, he's coming to anoint the next king of Israel, and he says to Samuel, do not look at his appearance, at his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as the man sees. For a man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. He looks inside of us. He doesn't look at just what we do. Listen, he looks at why we do what we do. And a pure heart is doing the right things, but for the right reason. Not just doing the right thing so you can be seen or appreciated or, wow, look at you. No, a pure heart is doing the right thing for the right reason. So God not only looks at our actions, he looks at our agenda. He looks at why we do things. And David, in his day, wasn't trying to be somebody famous. He was trying to save the generation that he lived in. And you'll be surprised that if you live a life with a pure heart, you won't care who gets the glory as long as it gets done and God gets the glory. It's a pure heart. It's not just actions, but it's agenda. Pure hearts are not perfect hearts. They are hearts that are towards God. That means like David, when they fall or they fail, they run not away from him, but into him. And if you read through the book of Psalms, you'll see regularly God crying out, search me, Lord. Forgive me. Help me, God. Please take not your presence from me. In other words, right throughout his life, David, though not perfect, had a pure heart. Talent will get you applause, but a pure heart will get you the favor of the king. Talent will get you applause, but a pure heart will get you the favor of the king. And we applaud great sportsmen for what they do. I do. I'm fascinated how amazing top quality sportsmen are. But they, as much as I applaud them, they don't change my life. And we need to be people not just with a great action, but a great agenda as well. It's a heart after God, is to have doing the right things for the right reasons. Third thing I noticed about David's heart is that he had a courageous heart. And the whole story, probably the most famous story in the Bible is David versus Goliath. And the reason it's so famous is it's a story of courage. It's David. There's a David taking on a giant. He's over 11 feet tall. Man, he's got muscles on his lips. He's got no neck. He's an all black front row. I mean, it's just a monster of a man. And the reason we go, wow, what a story, is because David didn't kill a midget, he killed a giant. He had incredible courage to take on obstacles that were bigger than him. And I've got no doubt, if I was to sum up the very father heart of God, it would be his courage. What inspires me about God is not just his greatness, but in his courage and knowing what Jesus did to come as a mere mortal, to be hung on a cross that he created, to be in a Gethsemane, a place of pressure so great, the decision so big in his head to die or to save his own life, where not only drops of sweat, but drops of blood were coming out of the pores of his skin because the decision was so big. At the end of the day, he says, not my will, but thy will be done. Courage is the absolute essence of the Father's heart. As fathers and as men, to be courageous enough to give up our own lives for the sake of our wives and our children, to be courageous enough to stand in the gap for those around us, courageous enough to be in that place. I mean, to see believers give their time, to stop and help somebody, to give their money, their talents, their gifts, and their treasure into the kingdom of God so that somebody else's life could be changed. To see them give their time, their gifts, and like Sammy the barber out there today, it's free today. He said, no, I want to do this, Mark. I want money for it. He didn't even bring a business card with him. I said, I need to talk to you about marketing. And but his heart wasn't that way. And, it's Cutthroat Barber at Tin Gulper, if you want to know. And, that sense of, see, that to me is incredible courage. Every great movie you've ever seen, whether it be a chick flick or an adventure movie, is based on courage. It's somebody standing up and going, see, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is not being restricted by fear. It's not the absence. It's not letting it stop you to move forward. Somebody standing up past their fears, every great movie, whether it be hobbits and orcs, 300 Greeks versus 1 million Philistines, whether it be the Avengers versus the aliens, it doesn't matter what it is. Every movie that wins is built on courage. And it's the very heart of God. Because without courage, you can't have faith. Without courage, you can't have faith. Let me tell you that how you'll know you're in faith right now is that you're a little bit scared. If you're not quite scared, then you're not in faith, because faith takes you past the edge of your boat. Faith takes you past that last step you went to, that last thing you did. It's not gambling, but it's courage, it's risk involved. And to have a heart after God is one to be always pushing into that next level of selflessness for the sake of others. Courage is the very heart of God. The fourth thing I noticed about David's heart is this, that he had a persistent heart. Persistent. In other words, I know courage gets us going. It gets us over the line. We're in. Come on, let's do this. But it's persistence that causes us to stay the course. Humanity's great. Mine. Our great weakness is not starting something. It's finishing something. It's committing to something. We start with I'm in Jesus. I'm in honey. We start with, we're in. And if you look at humanity's frailty, it comes not from our ability to start something, it comes from our ability to finish something, to commit to it, to hang on. And yet, it is one of the most enduring biblical values that there are. The Bible goes on to say things like this: those that endure to the end shall be saved. It goes on, it says, pray, not once, not twice, pray until. And then it goes on, it says, when you've done everything you can do, then stand. Endurance is a deliberate biblical quality that enables us to overcome at the end of the day. It doesn't say pray once. It doesn't say if they don't listen, shut up, sit down and be quiet, give up. It says no, pray until. Stand when you've done everything you can. It's the quality of stone. Aren't you glad that God never gave up on us? Aren't you glad he said, you know what? That's enough. I'm done with you. Man, you too many times. No. Aren't you glad that he never gives up on us, that God stays the course? Many times King David could have given up. The obstacles in his life when his boss, Saul, tried to kill him. He could have given up then. Don't want this. The death of his first son. He could have said, God, where are you? And given up then. There was even a time when he was out doing the right things and he was invading the lands around him to bring treasure and blessing to the people that he loved. That while he was gone, the enemy came in and stole the women and the children. He gets back to camp, and look what happens in 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 6. Now David got home. He was greatly distressed. The enemy had come. While he was doing the good thing, the right thing, like you and I do sometimes, we're out doing God's things and the enemy comes in from behind. And then David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him. Not only was he distressed, the people were it's a bad day when the congregation wants to stone the pastor. It's one of those days you'd go out to your horse and then your horse would bite you. You know, like one of those days. But it says, because the soul of all the people grieved, because every man of his sons and his daughters that had been stolen, but David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. He didn't give up. He didn't give in. He didn't go, what's wrong with you people? Don't you see what I'm doing for you? Don't I do this? Fathers, mothers, don't you see what I'm doing for you? Don't you realize what I go through at work? Don't you realize what I go through at home? No, put it back into perspective and stay the course. David strengthened himself, not in anger or disillusionment, but in the Lord his God. Go to the place of prayer. Go to the place of the Bible. Start to strengthen your soul again. Read and eat of what's good for you that brings strength to your life. There's always a reason to give up. Always a reason to give in. Problems and challenges either become our walls or they become our stepping stones. They become our way up or a reason to give up. And it's our choice. I've done some research, and great people are great people for many different reasons. I mean, it doesn't matter where you look at greatness, they come from this and that, and they're good at this, they do this, they've got that. But the one thing that all great people have in common, the one thing, it doesn't matter what their gift is, their talent, the one great thing that every great person has in common is that they didn't quit and they're still there. The one thread amongst it all, they didn't give in. They stayed the course. How many gold strikes weren't found because they gave up a meter short of what? There's gold in them there hills. 1 meter short, just didn't stay the distance. And they missed out on the blessing. Remember Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of England during the Second World War. And England was in a place of little. Really, they had nothing left. Their economy was bad. They were facing one of the greatest enemies, the Nazi Germany they'd ever seen. It looked just like they didn't have a chance. And as a statesman, he did speak, and Winston Churchill spoke a speech. And spoke a speech. And his speech went something like this: Never. Never. Never, 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 never give up. What a great speech. I wish I'd written that one. And it was a speech that rallied the English of the day to stand again, even with beer bottles and broken stones. They were going to take on their enemy and not lay down to be beaten. What a great statesman he was. He was accosted by a woman at a tea party once, and she said to him, Mr. Churchill, if I was your wife, I'd put poison in your tea. He says, Madam, if I was your husband, I'd drink it. Never, never give up. Heart after God. The next thing I learned about David's heart was this, is that he had a submissive heart. Psalm 139 verses 23 and 24, if you read that, it says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there's any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. In other words, he was saying to God, I need to change and I need your help. I'm not who I should be all of the time, and I want you. He had a submissive heart. Let me tell you what submission is, men, husbands. You can't point to your wife and says, the Bible says, submit to me. No, you can't make anybody submit. You can make people obey. All right, you can add enough pressure and pain to a person, they will obey. It doesn't mean they submit, because submission only comes from the inside of a heart. It's not something that's forced upon anybody. You can make people obey. It's like your teenage boy, you're telling him to clean up his room. He's not doing it. He won't get off that machine or doing something. And yeah. And you're told, get up, do that. Go and clean your room. No, yeah, the whole thing. So you've got to put a bit of pressure on him, If you don't get up, I'm going to rip your arms off, stick them in your ears, and ride you around like a bicycle. That's what fathers do, put pressure on them. We get dominant, stand strong, tall, deep in voice, and growl a little bit. Now, they might obey, but it doesn't mean they submitted. Just because somebody obeys doesn't mean they're submitted. You can't make anybody submit. And God's not after just obedience, He's after submission. He doesn't want you to do something because you've got to do it, or you better because the Bible says to do it. No, He's after a submit. It says, wives, submit to your husband. Only a wife can do that. No husband can force her to do that. And then it goes on, everybody likes that, all the men like that part. But the next verse says, then submit one to another. Oh, I've never read that. No, submit one to another. And again, it's not obey one another, it's submit to one another. And if we understand the heart of God, it's not about just obedience, it's about submission. It comes from your heart. Submission is the willingness to obey, to learn, to change. You look at any great athlete, and it always, I love sports. I look at great athletes, and they've got a coach telling them what to do, and the coach isn't as good as them because he's the coach. Otherwise, he'd be the star player. So you can't make any great athlete do anything they don't want to do. You can't make them obey. That great player has to submit to the coach. And it's in the strength of submission that gives us the power to grow and to change and be all that God wants us to. Obedience is good, but submission is a heart after God. Have we got James chapter 4? Did we put that up there? Have we got that? Yeah. James 4 verse 6. But He gives more grace. Therefore He says, God resists the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. He resists the proud. Proudful people aren't people that with expensive cars and 6 houses and walk around blabbing about themselves. Now, biblical pride is when we're not willing to change or listen to what God says. So who God resists are the proud. God resists those who aren't willing to change, who don't want to hear his voice, and who leave him alone. Humility is the expression of a submitted heart. Humility is not weakness, it's not meekness. It says, I am good and I'm of God, but I know I need God to help me move to my next level. It's a heart of submission. And he says, to those that are humble, God will give you grace. And grace means that God is working on your behalf even though you don't deserve it. So God's grace is given to those that are willing to change, willing to listen, willing to obey, not because they have to, but because their heart's not obedient as much as it is submissive. To them, he will give grace, favor that they didn't deserve. Hey, today, let's be believers that are known for having a heart after God. People that are on close, they're heading towards God. When they get knocked back, they move closer in. They don't pull away. They don't pull themselves out. They lean into their answers. Today, this is a heart checkup. So like David, we'll be a people after God's own heart. The Bible is very clear. It says this, guard your heart with all diligence. Guard this with all diligence. Why? Because out of it flow the issues of life. Everything significant and eternal starts within the human heart. And out of it will flow all those things that will cause us to rise up, to draw close, pull away, and lose what we have in him. Today, let's be believers that chase down the heart of God and live as same as David did. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes?